No.
Okay, it's okay.
Mhm.
Um, so we're gonna start the fourth mission of A Taste of Talmud. As always, we're going to start with the bracha of learning Torah every day. It says "Vehigeta bo yomam v'layla." We have to engage with it day and night. So please join me. Baruch atah Adonai
Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu,
melech
melech
haolam
haolam,
Am
asher
asher
Kishanu
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 mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav
v'tzivanu,
v'tzivanu
aso
aso
b'divrei
divrei
Torah.
Torah. Beautiful. And once again, if there's anyone that anyone wants to dedicate tonight's learning to, let us know. If there's a yortzeit or someone needs a mishuberach, we could definitely learn in the zchut, in the merit of those people. Um,
Son, I would like to dedicate Planet Esther was the day that the women and children and elderly people were murdered from my father's community in Poland. And they were sent to Chelmna. Comes out Planet Esther. So
oh wow, for sure.
I'd like to dedicate.
Which town was it?
It was called Krushnevitz. It was between Kutna and Lodz, was where my father came from. Yeah.
Okay. So again, we're on the first Mishnah of Bracha, the first tractate, and I'll just blaze through the Mishnah quickly, just for review. So right away, the Mishnah comes with a question: Me'e matai? From when? Korin et Shema b'arvin. From when do we recite the Shema at night? Answer: Misha'a she'kohanim nichnasim lechol b'trumatan ad sof hashmura harishona. From the hour that the Kohanim enter to eat of their truma, which we have discussed, until the end of the first watch. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. V'chachamim omrim ad chatzot. And the sages say until midnight. Again, in terms of halachic hours, not in terms of like the stroke of midnight. Rama Gamliel Omer Ad Sheyale Amud HaShachar. Rabbi Gamliel says until the dawn, until the sun starts to rise. Maaseh, there was an incident. Uvau banav mi Beit HaMishteh. His sons came back from the wedding hall, Amrulo, and said to him, Lo karinu et Shema. We have not yet recited the Shema. Amar lahem, he said to him, who? Rabban Gamliel, because that's the last quote that we were talking about. So we assume that that's the Maaseh. Im lo ala amud hashachar. So he says to them, if the sun has not yet risen, chayavin otam likot. You are still chayav, you're still obligated to recite the Shema. Velozo bilvad. And not only in this case, amru, ela kol ma she'amru chachamim ar chatzot. Any time that the Mishnah, that the halacha tells us that the sages say that you're allowed to do something until midnight, mitzvatan ad sheya'aleh amut hashachar. In fact, the mitzvah extends all the way until the dawn. And then cites the example, hekta chalavim ve'varim, the burning of the fats and the limbs, which was done in the temple. Mitzvatan ad sheyaleh amud hashachar. The mitzvah goes all the way until the dawn. V'chol hanechalim liyom echad, and all that is required to be eaten on that very same day. Mitzvatan ad sheyaleh amud hashachar. The mitzvah extends all the way until the dawn. Im Kain. If so, Lama Amru Chachamim ad Chatzot? Why did the Chachamim even say until Chatzot, until midnight? If we're saying anytime the Chachamim say until midnight, actually they mean until sunrise, why did they even bother to say until midnight? Answer, Kedei leharchik adam min ha'avera, to distance a person from a transgression. Right? Because I'm horrible with deadlines, and if you extend my deadline, I'm gonna go right up until the deadline. I'm trying to be more on the ball with things. Um, but so that's the reason, zrizut it's called, that we have to hurry up and do the mitzvah and don't delay because we'll forget about it and then we will transgress. So
But
then we talked
isn't,
about, I'm
I have a
sorry?
question.
Yeah.
Isn't 12:01 the next day? And yeah,
On our modern Western time, yes,
oh, but not
but
then.
not in terms of Jewish time, right? Jewish time, the next day starts at night. We're now asking the question, when is night? Like when can we say, from when can we say the Shema at night? When are we allowed to fulfill this mitzvah that we're required to do at night?
If I may add, the whole concept of 12:01 and numbered hours did not exist in antiquity. It's only when you had clocks towards the end of the Middle Ages that it was even possible to talk about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. Those are modern, relatively modern ways of thinking of time.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, the verbiage in Mishnah and Gemara discusses what they call sha'ot zmaniyot, at like hours of time, and how they and sort of what the formula is to calculate those times. And of course, we know that it changes day to day, right? Only by minutes, but it changes day to day as the sunrise gets later and the sunset gets later. It changes, right? Because we all know Shabbat 2 weeks ago started at 5:30, and now this week it's going to start at 6:30. Um, but So they do split the day into 24 hours, 12 daytime, 12 nighttime. And so they're saying at the mid of the night, that's when Chachamim say that you're allowed to recite Shema until, but really we just learned in the Mishnah, really that means until sunrise. So if you go to sleep having forgotten to say Shema and you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you said, uh-oh, I didn't say Shema, you can say it and you still fulfill the mitzvah. So we talked just about a little bit of the Gemara, what it is. We learned this word sugya, which it means like a section, and how there's all these sections in the Gemara. And then we started the actual Gemara. So I just always like to take a look at the daf, at the actual page of Gemara before looking at other translations and things like Sefaria. So if you can see my cursor, so the Gemara, which on the daf starts here, but we zoom in. Tana hecha kai diktari me'ematai. So right away the Gemara is coming out with a question. Where did the Tana rabbi get this me'ematai from? Like where is this coming from? Vitu, and furthermore, Maishna Detani Ba'arvi Beresha. Why did he teach um, the obligation of the nighttime first? Litni de Shachrit Beresha. We should have learned the Shachrit first. Right? So, question. And we discussed some answers. Someone want to remind the group of an answer? Is there another Adam Stotland out there that would like to answer? Why did we start? Why did we start learning the laws of Shema at night? First of all, how come we learned right away starting with the laws of Shema when we should have learned, right? So the Gemara's question implies, what should the first Mishnah be? This is the first Mishnah, right? The first Mishnah should maybe teach us of the obligation to recite the Shema. Before we start asking, when is the time to do it? Let's first learn about doing it.
Because
Yeah.
it's written in the Torah.
Yeah,
It's
what is written in the Torah? Right.
In the Shema, it says Erev first and then Boker after. So you
That's
do
exactly right. So
And
the
then
same
also-
answer, yeah.
Also, when the account of creation, it's Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, not the other way around.
Right. So the Gemara answers with the first answer, it answers both questions, or it actually offers two answers and two sources. Dichtiv, as it is written, b'shoch becha uvkumecha. So it's telling you, first of all, we learned of the mitzvah just from the literal text of the Torah. So the Mishnah didn't have to reteach us this this mitzvah. Right? It's called mitzvah deoraita. It's a mitzvah that comes from the Torah. Whereas Rabbanan, mitzvot, maybe you could really argue that the Mishnah should have taught that mitzvah first. The Hachidiktani is man kriyat shema deshkiva ema. So now it's saying that when is the time of kriyat shema, the time of lying down, and this is the time that the Kohanim come in to eat truma. And as Bill correctly said, b'ibait ema, you could also say Yalif mibriato shel olam. We also learn it from the creation of the world. Dichtiv, as it is written, Vayhi erev, vayhi voker yom echad. Right, the first day of creation is Vayhi erev. First there was night, and then there was day. So I forget where we left off last week. I think it may have been here. I'm not sure if we finished the whole sugya. But then the Gemara goes on to ask another question. Ihachi. If so, Seifa diktani b'shachar mevarech shtayim lefaneha ve'achat le'achareh uve'erev mevarech shtayim lefaneha u'shtayim le'achareh. If so, okay, smarty pants. So if that's your answer, how come in a later Mishnah, I think it's the second or the third Mishnah, we're taught in the morning we have two blessings before the Shema and one blessing after the Shema, and at the nighttime, we have two blessings before and two blessings after. So what's the Gemara asking here? What should the later Mishnah have taught first? If we're saying that we just learned that the reason that we learned the Shema at night first is because look, it says in the Torah, "B'shoch becha uvkumecha." First, when you lie down. When do you lie down? At night. So you should learn the laws of the nighttime Shema first. Plus, when we talk about creation of the world, Vayerev Vayivoker, also again the night. So then the next question is, oh yeah? So how come in a later Mishnah it talks about the morning blessings first, and it teaches us that in the morning we have two blessings before we say Shema, lefaneha, and one blessing after. And at the nighttime, we have two blessings before and two blessings after. That later Mishnah should have kept on this theme of teaching us this second part first, about the two blessings before and after in the nighttime, and then teach us that there's two blessings and one after for the morning. Make sense? I mean, this is really getting into the weeds, right? Like this is where the Amoraim from the Gemara go. They like really, dissect every point. Litni de Arvit Beresha. We should have learned the Arvit lesson first, that there's 2 blessings before and 2 blessings after. But the Mishnah taught us the other way around. I thought we have to learn, Mariv first. Answer, a very, very pragmatic answer. Tana betach. Where's my cursor? Tana patach ba'arvit v'hadar tani b'shachrit. The Tana taught the Arvit. Oh, the Tana started with Arvit and only later taught Shachrit. Adekai b'Shachrit piresh mili de Shachrit. But once he was already on the point of Shachrit, continued to talk about Shachrit. V'hadar piresh mili de Arvit. And after explained about Arvit. Right? So it was taught b'shoch b'chav kumecha, we say Shema at night, and then in the morning. But then he was at the morning time, so he included, and in the morning we have 2 blessings before and 1 blessing after. And in the nighttime, we have 2 blessings before and 2 blessings after. So not a huge, deep philosophical answer. His mind was on Shachrit, so he continued teaching Shachrit. Very, pragmatic answer. So that's the sugya. That's the first sugya. These are just the translations. So we looked at Rashi, and Rashi basically explained what the question of the Gemara was to us. More translation. Okay. So now where does the Gemara go? Amar Mar. The master said. So we're here and we're here. So Mar is very common in Gemara, and they're not referring to one specific person. Sometimes when they don't reference anything, we assume that they're talking about Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Who was Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi? Really the main person that compiled all the Mishnah. So when there's like this out of the blue, Amar Mar, we assume we were talking about Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. In this case, there is a quote, and we're going back to the Mishnah, so we understand who exactly we're talking about. And this is a sign of respect, where the rabbis are saying the master said, and they're quoting here, Mishasha Kohanim nichnasim lechol b'terumatan, from the time that the Kohanim enter to eat of the truma. So who are they quoting? Whose opinion said that from when do we recite Shema? From the time that we enter the truma? Anyone remember? Rabbi Eliezer. That was the first opinion that we learned. Mm-hmm. So now we're going back to that point, and we assume that there's a question coming. And there is. Mikidi Kohanim emat ka achli truma. When do the Kohanim go to eat truma? Right? So again, we asked this question, I think, in our second session, to say that we're allowed to recite the Shema from the time that the Kohanim go to eat truma, or let's say dinner, just for modern, that doesn't answer what time I can say Shema, because, and here we're asking, when do the Kohanim go to eat truma? Answer, Misha'at Tzeit HaKochavim, from the time that the stars appear. So I'm sure that we all know. How do we know Shabbat ends? when you see the three stars. If you're camping without a watch on Shabbos and you're uncertain, if you see three stars on a Saturday night, you know Shabbat's over. Why is that the case? Because in halachic parlance, Tzeta Kochavim is nighttime. The emergence of the stars signifies the arrival of night. So then it says, Litni, you should just teach Misha'at Tzeta Kochavim. So here's another question. Why didn't the Mishnah just say, or why didn't Rabbi Eliezer just teach us from when can you say Shema? From Tzeta Kochavim, from the emergence of stars. So that is the next question in our Gemara. Why did Rabbi Eliezer answer that way when he should have? I mean, that's the question. Why didn't Rabbi Eliezer just say, from when can you recite Shema? From Tzeta Kochavim. Why the vague reference to the Kohanim? Anyone have an idea? And I'll just cancel out an answer that we talked about before. It has nothing to do. Well, that's not necessarily true. It's not a philosophical answer that they then pose.
Can you rephrase the question?
Sure. The question is, why didn't the Mishnah just say that you can recite Shema from Tzeta Kochavim? Why did the Mishnah say you can recite Shema from when the Kohanim can enter to eat Truma?
Well, the Mishnah and the Torah, aren't they in conflict with each other continuously?
I wouldn't say conflict. I would say that the Mishnah explains the Torah and the Tanaim. The Mishnah is really is a book about Jewish laws, and so where do the laws come from? It's not that it comes from the Torah. And then the Gemara is where not conflict, but sort of back and forth, trying to really, dissect the true meanings of things.
But the Torah is the law of the land. Am I wrong in saying that?
The Torah is the law of the land.
It's the law of direction.
The Torah has many laws in it. In fact, I think there's 613.
Yes, 600. You're right. Okay, I take it back. You win. You go ahead.
Yep.
Firstly, does everyone understand the question that the Gemara is asking? I just can't see everyone when I'm sharing the screen. So if there is a question, just unmute and ask.
I have a vocabulary question and then probably a bad answer. What does ka-a mean? Or kuf aleph? You have amat ka, and I've never seen that word.
Amat ka, like ka is then.
Oh, then. Okay. So
Like when then eat truma. If
okay. Now,
yeah.
To answer your question, it occurs to me that if you say it's when the stars come out, that's a natural phenomenon, but if you say when the Kohanim, the priests go to eat the truma, that's another mitzvah. So you're connecting one mitzvah to another. That would be more appealing.
Ooh, you're going right where the Gemara is going. Very nice.
All right.
Can you repeat that again, please?
Should I read?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
All right.
I'm
said-
interested in your thoughts.
I said, if it seems much more plausible to me, and I think anyone, in our time, to relate something to the coming to the stars. It's a natural phenomenon. But
Okay.
maybe the rabbis of the sages, they said, well, that's just a natural phenomenon. We're going to connect the saying of the Shema, which is a mitzvah that we're trying to locate, to another mitzvah, and sort of build the whole thing together as one interconnected piece. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense.
it makes sense to me. And yeah, Shirley?
So also, people were dispersed in different places. So they wouldn't, and the temple, didn't exist at certain times. So you wouldn't be able to relate back to that. And going back to what Bill said, the natural phenomena of the stars coming out, will take you anywhere. You can take yourself anywhere to do the Shema.
Yeah, but I would even argue the point further, because at the time of the Amoraim there was no Beit HaMikdash. So throw that into the mix. They're currently referencing something that we don't currently do anymore.
Mhm.
So, I mean, to me, that just reinforces the question. Why did the Mishnah even say that? They should have just said Tzedek Kochavim. That's the natural thing, Bill. So that's what they should have said. We can all understand Tzedek Kochavim.
That's a good
Now I'm in
point.
Babylon. I have never been to Jerusalem before. My Zaidi used to talk about the Beit HaMikdash. I had no idea what he was talking about. Why are they doing Truma? Why are they
I think
using
what
that as
they're
reference?
I think what they're saying is that we need a practical time. When can we do it? So the practical answer is when the stars come out, but that is not sufficient. That's just a starting point. We need also to be in a purified state to say the Shema, and that's why we have to marry that with the Kohanim eating the Truma.
I'm thinking it has to do with memory preservation.
How so, Sky?
To keep the memory of the temple alive so that we can do these rituals again one day, and so that it's directly related to things that we're doing now, and it makes it relevant to us so that we can remember it collectively.
Beautiful. These are all amazing answers. So let's see where the Gemara takes us. So we're here. Milta agav orche kamash malan. So
Where are
they're
you?
being taught something else. Kohanim emat ka'achli b'truma misha'at tzedek kochavim. When do the Kohanim go to eat truma? From tzedek kochavim. So the Gemara, and I think answers kind of combines all the answers we heard. The Mishnah is kind of sneaking in another teaching, right? So when can you say Shema? From the time that the Kohanim can enter Truma. If they had just said Tzedek Kochavim, Bill said that's the natural thing, that's the obvious thing. They're throwing in another layer of teaching here from Truma. And look, even for us it worked, because when we looked at the Mishnah, we took 5 minutes and learned about Truma. And learned about the 3 watches, right? So I totally get what Sky is saying, preserving the mitzvahs of the temple. Beautiful. Now let's see how they digest that. So, when do the Kohanim eat the truma? From Tzeit HaKochavim. V'hakamashmalan the kapara lo machava kidetanya. Sorry, the kapara lo machava. And the and we hear from this that the kapara, the atonement offering, does not prevent the kohanim from eating truma. So this needs a little bit of background. When the kohen would become impure, there was a whole thing that they had to do. They had to wash their clothes. They had to go to the mikvah, and they would be ritually pure at night, but they would have to, but they were still not allowed to do certain things in the temple. The next day, they would bring a korban kapara, the atonement offering, and then they were fully, pure again. So this is now going to teach us that they were allowed to eat the truma at night at Tzeit HaKochavim, even though they hadn't brought that korban yet.
Even though they still were impure.
Even though they were still not fully pure again. Right, we see that they weren't completely impure because we're saying they were allowed to eat from truma, and we learned in the first or second session who are the only people allowed to eat from truma? Kohanim, who must be ritually pure. So they're allowed to eat from truma. So now we're even learning a few more things about through this answer. Right. That the not bringing of the korban kapara does not prevent them from eating of the truma. Kidetanya, as it says, uva hashemesh v'taher, that when the sun sets, they are pure. Biat shimsho makavto milecho b'truma, ve'ein kaparato makavto milecho b'truma. The setting of the sun prevents them from eating of truma, but the korban kapara does not prevent them from eating of truma, right? So they're not allowed to eat from the truma until the sun is set, but they are allowed to eat from the truma even though they have not brought their kapara yet. Any questions? Great.
The plot thickens.
The plot thickens.
Right?
Again, like this is meant to be a taste of Talmud, and this is how the Talmud goes. Like there's one layer, and then they branch off into a few other points. Then they dissect all those other points and bring a Mishnah, bring a Braita, bring a quote, bring a story, and sometimes never even come back to that first thought, which makes it fun. So let's just sum up what we just learned, because I wrote it out. Oh, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry if you're getting dizzy. In cases where an impure priest is required to immerse themselves in a ritual bath and bring an atonement offering, right, kapara, even if he already immersed himself, he's not completely ritually pure until he brings that atonement offering. Nevertheless, he's still permitted to partake of truma. This is taught in passing in our Mishnah and articulated fully in a Braita, and we will talk about a Braita in a second because that's another term like sugya, Braita. This is the language of Talmud, based on close reading of biblical passages, as it was taught in the Braita with regard to the laws of ritual impurity. It says, "One who touches it remains impure until when? Until evening. And they should not eat of consecrated items, must wash his flesh with water." And this is the quote that we were just talking about. Uva hashemesh v'taher, and the sun sets and it is purified. Afterwards, he may eat from the truma, for it is his bread, and that comes from Vayikra. But failure to bring the atonement offering does not prevent him from eating truma. So, classic Gemara, it's now going to question the very thing we just learned. So they answer with a proof and a what, and now they're going to almost attack it. Umimai dehayuva hashemesh biat hashemesh.
Excuse me,
Sorry?
where's your cursor? I'm trying to find it. Are you reading it from the right side or?
No, the
So
left.
anyone who wants to follow
Yeah.
here, we
Yeah.
are
Okay,
right here.
thank you.
Umimai dehayuva hashemesh,
Yeah,
and right here.
yeah.
Umimai dehayuva hashemesh biat hashemesh. From where do we know that when we say the sun sets, this is talking about biat hashemesh, the complete setting of the sun. V'hai v'taher taher yoma. And when we say taher, we're talking about the taher of the next day, right? We're saying uva hashemesh v'taher. So we're saying that even though the sun has set, Kohanim can eat the truma, but they're not fully pure. So v'taher, so we're assuming that the v'taher is for the morning, but the biat hashemesh, like when is biat hashemesh? That is, the question really is, from where do we know that the biat hashemesh, right? It says uva hashemesh, that sun sets. We just assumed that it means fully set, right? But we've all seen sunsets. Sunsets go on. The sun wanes. Colors change. When is sunset?
When the
Well-
stars appear.
No.
When the stars come out, or the stars leave us.
So let me ask you a question. When does Shabbat start?
When I read it, it says 4:32.
20
In-
minutes before, 20 minutes, I think, before sunset.
18 minutes.
I thought it was when there were three
After
stars in the sky.
You said, when does it start? Isn't that what you
When
said?
does Shabbat start on Friday?
Before sunset.
Oh,
Before
you're right.
sunset.
You're right.
Before
A
sunset.
certain number of minutes before sunset.
Okay, so it's 18 minutes before
18.
sunset.
18, all right. How
And-
did they get
and,
18?
Hi.
Shaud's maniot. I guess it's chai.
All right, I guess that's
And when does Shabbat end?
when the three stars come out.
Right.
So it's about an hour difference between them.
So first of all, sunset isn't night, right? Because if Shabbat started at night, we would say when the Shabbat started, say the Kochavim, when the stars come out. Sunset and night are not the same thing. And the sunset for Shabbat, it actually isn't when stars come out.
Yeah.
Because if you're ever outside when Shabbat start, even that first sort of half an hour, even
It's
there's
still
still
light.
light in the sky, right?
Mhm.
So this is the question of the Gemara. We're told that the Kohen becomes pure based on the pasuk uva hashemesh v'taher, when the sun sets, they're pure. So now they're asking again, it's not clear. How are we to assume that when the pasuk says when the sun sets, we're actually talking about the full setting of the sun?
So what's the question?
The always important to know what the question is. The question is what does the Gemara mean, or what does the pasuk mean when it says uva hashemesh, the sun is set?
Isn't the sunset when you're? It's hard to see it in a city, but if you're at the beach, when the last piece of the disk of the sun disappears, and it's there's an expression in French about the last green ray that you see, le rayon
Very
vert.
nice. Oh, so just to reference the page of Gemara, so we just finished Daf Bet Amud Aleph, the first page, and now we flipped, and now we're on the back end of Daf Bet, so we're on Daf Bet Amud Bet. Dilma maybe biat orohu. Maybe when the pasuk tells us uva hashemesh, we're talking about biat ora, that there's still light, that it's sort of at the beginning of sunset, right? Because it takes time for the sun to set. Umay v'taher, tahri gavra. And what does taher mean? Taher gavra means that the person will become purified.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, only then are they able to eat from truma. So again, we're looking for more specifics. It still seems kind of vague, even to say, to quote the pasuk to prove that the Kohanim are pure at night, still didn't prove that it's sort of when they become pure exactly. Amar Rabba Barav Shela, we're here.
Yeah.
Rava, the son of Rav Shela, said, Im kain, if so, lema kra v'yitar. If so, let the pasuk say v'yitar, and he will become purified. Right? So we're getting into the tense over here. If we're saying that they're not fully purified yet, the pasuk should have said uva hashemesh. Oh, I'm sorry. If we were to learn or assume that uva hashemesh, that the setting of the sun was at the beginning of sunset and not at the end, then the pasuk should have read veyitar, and he will become pure. My vitaher. What does it mean vitaher? Tahar yoma, that the day is pure, that the sun has set already, and that the next day has started, and that the Kohen is now pure enough to eat from truma. Kida amri inshi, as people say, Iyarav shimsha ve'idaki yoma, that the sun has set and the day has become pure.
Why?
So
I'm
a
sorry.
bit of a Hebrew lesson here. So the question is, or the last question was, if we're quoting the pasuk uva hashemesh v'taher to explain that the Kohen becomes pure at sunset, the Gemara then asks, it doesn't really specify, because How do we know we're talking about the end of sunset and not the beginning of sunset? Sunset lasts some time. It's not this, it's not, Tzedek Kochavim, we know you see the three stars, there's no debate. You see three, it's there. If you see two, you're not there yet. If you see four, good to go. Sunset is still vague. So they asked that question, and the answer was we can assume that it's at the end of that the sun has fully set. Why? Because it says vitaher. If we're talking about the beginning of sunset, it would have said veyitaher, that the Kohen will become pure, that they're sort of still waiting. But we know vitaher, they're pure, they can eat from truma. Uva hashemesh, we can deduce, is at the end of sunset.
Why are we always referring to the Kohanim? What about the other tribes?
So we're referring to the Kohanim because the answer that Rabbi Eliezer gave from when we can recite Shema in the night was when the Kohanim come to eat their truma. That's why we're fixed on the Kohanim.
But it refers to the other tribes too, I assume.
No, it refers to the high priest, what the high priest does.
Oh, so everybody follows.
Well,
Yep.
it's instructing the rest of the people, and even Kohanim too, because they also have to say Shema. So it's instructing Klal Yisrael, the entirety of Israel, as to when they're allowed to recite the Shema. And I loved Sky's answer that we were also sticking in laws of the Beit HaMikdash, which was no longer and is no longer, and we're still learning the laws of the Beit HaMikdash.
But if you look at all the participants tonight, Sky is the youth, and we're not the youth.
That's okay.
So good for you, Sky.
So when is sunset?
Check the paperman's calendar.
You can check your phone.
You can check your
But then
phone.
it varies from season to season. I mean,
That's
there
right.
must be something factual that explains that this is a sunset.
That's right. So I didn't want to dwell on this too much because I wanted to end with something else, but I just want to close the loop on this sugya and explain that then the Gemara goes on to say, Bamarava in the west, Hadarabba bar Shela lav shmialahu. They did not hear about this saying that Rabba bar Rav Shela said, so they didn't learn it this way. Uvale mibaye. But they also asked the question, Hayuva hashemesh. What does sunset mean? Umay v'taher taher yoma. Odilma biat orahu. So first of all, this comes up often when the Talmud Bavli says Bimarava in the west. Where do we think that they're talking about?
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Or even more accurately, maybe a little north of Jerusalem, where the Yerushalmi was focused, was really by the Kinneret area. But they're talking about Talmud Yerushalmi now. So basically they're saying they didn't learn it this way. But they also raised the same question. Does the pasuk Uva Hashemesh talk about the complete setting of the sun? And does the Taher refer to that the day becomes pure, so that's fully night? Odilma, or maybe Biat Orahu. Maybe we're still talking about kind of the first setting of the light and not really the full setting of the sun. And again, asking, and so then what is this meaning of the Taher? And so they were able to answer from a Braita and we'll just talk about Braita shortly, just for 1 second, and that they learned from a Braita the same thing, that it's Seta Kochavim, and that we can learn from this Biat Shimshahu, that it's the complete setting of the sun. And what does V'taher mean? That it's this new day, and it's a new day of purity. So I just thought it was neat that they referenced Yerushalmi guys. Those guys didn't hear about that saying, but actually they had the same question, and they were able to get their answer from a Braita, and they came up with the same answer, which I find really, really fascinating. So I just wanted to explain a Braita, which we hear of all the time, and a Braita is
Meaning outside or external.
right. It means outside because it's outside the actual codified Mishnah. These are Tanaitic teachings that come from Tanas, from the same group of rabbis that teach in the Mishnah, the same people, but didn't make it into the final cut. So they were not officially added to the Mishnah. They are Tosefta. They are additions, but they're important because I think I explained in the first class that there was this hierarchical system that the rabbis of the Gemara cannot legally argue against the rabbis of the Mishnah. Right? The Mishnah came first. It says these are the laws. Never will you say, no, that's not the law. Because if the Mishnah says it's the law, we believe that's the law. We just maybe need some more clear understanding of what the law is about, how we do it, where it comes from. And so the Mishnah is used for like a case point, as reference to argue a point, and a Braita is on the same level as a Mishnah. So a Braita can be used to argue a point and carries the same weight as a Mishnah legally because they come from the same time. Make sense?
So what's the difference?
Well, I guess
Really good. Yeah, I'm sorry, Roger.
no, I guess Hanasi did not include it in the Mishnah, so that's the only difference. He chose not to include it.
Got
Yeah,
it?
I'm not sure if we know why. I would think timing and just
Hmm.
some things make it in and some things don't.
But it's interesting that it carries the same weight, that they give
Okay.
it the same
Mm.
weight. Interesting.
Same purpose. Okay.
Because it comes from the same teachers, the same rabbis.
Mhm.
So it's often used as like a proof text to argue, right? So let's say we're learning a Mishnah. This Mishnah taught me this. Oh yeah, but if it taught you that, how come later I learned in a Braita that it goes this way? Maybe we should do the mitzvah that way, just like we were talking about later in
Sundown.
the Braita. It was teaching us that we learned the brachas surrounding the morning Shema first, then the evening Shema, right? That type of discourse.
Do they usually come to the same conclusion? I mean, are they really, they can be
Yeah, I mean,
very
usually
different.
there is a conclusion, and because they came from the same time, I mean, there's probably no intense direct conflict between the mitzvot you would learn in the Mishnah than the mitzvot you would learn from the actual Braita. Um, it's just, let's say, learning Torah, things, interweave, right? Like now we were learning about Shema, and look how far we get. Like we're getting into Truma, we're getting into sacrifices, we're getting into, legal timings. So, and then we see that all these points are then questioned and argued. What are we talking about here? What does this word mean here? Well, this pasuk says this over here. So that's when they come into play, because the same concept or the same word or the same teaching can be gleaned from many, many places, right? So if I learn that I have to put on tefillin at a certain time or on at a certain way, but in the Braita it says, oh yeah, well this guy put on tefillin that way, maybe we should do it that way. So no one's saying that we don't have to put on tefillin, right? It's just, well, he did it this way, they did it that way, and in fact, to date, we have two types of tefillin or two main types of tefillin. And you'll sometimes see people that at the end of davening take off one set of tefillin, put on another set of tefillin, because they're like covering their bases. There's two there's two distinct opinions on the types of tefillin that we should wear. And that's just one small little thing. Take all 613 mitzvot and throw them in the like whirlpool. And it's a lot of cross referencing.
So Adam, there was another person then who was the compiler of the Braita. So Judah HaNasi compiled the Mishnah. So
Yeah.
after him, there was someone else who came and said, well, there's a lot of loose pieces that we should include it. And so there's someone else who compiled this Braita. Is that correct? Yeah.
I'm not sure. I know that there's the Tosefta, which is the sort of like the volume that houses all the Braita. I'm not sure who compiled that,
Mhm.
but I'm sure
But it's all integrated.
100%,
Okay.
because it all comes from the same place.
But it came after the Mishnah.
Yes.
They don't contradict. I mean, they finally come to the same conclusion, more or less.
I think it's adding discussions. I don't think there's anything about, you know what I mean? It always just seems adding layers of this to the discussion, right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So we did a full page of Gemara just to, where's my let's just take a look. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that.
So did we finally determine when sunset was?
Today?
Yeah. Not really.
Today, I'm not sure when it was, but we did determine that when the pasuk says "Uva hashemesh v'taher,"
Yeah.
that when
know
the
that.
sun sets and they're pure, we're talking about the actual complete setting of the sun, and not the beginning of sunset, the end of sunset.
We didn't go into the explanation of the sunset.
No, I mean not in terms of the time. Okay, so this is the page of Gemara that we just did. We started with the Mishnah that went until here. We then did the Gemara until here. We did several of the Rashis along the way. Again, Rashi just kind of makes hopefully to make things more obvious. We didn't do the Tosfot, unfortunately. I actually took a look at the Tosfot. It's like next level. Perhaps that'll be a taste of Talmud 2.0. But I just really hope that everyone got a taste, that really like a taste of like how things are structured and laid out, and just the back and forth dissected. And I wanted to end, at least formally, with another Mishnah. Sorry, one second. That I thought was fitting to end. We started with the first Mishnah. We're going to end with the very last, or at least the last from the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, from the 6 volumes of Mishnah. Whoops. Okay. So this is the last Mishnah that's in Pirkei Avot, which is the last official codified section of Mishnah. Kol ma shebara kadosh baruch hu be'olamo. Everything that Hashem created in His world, lo vra'o ella lichvodo. He did not create only for His kavod, for His glory. Shneimar, as it says in Isaiah chapter 43, Kol hanikra bishmi v'lichvodi berativ yitzartiv af asitiv. All who call upon my name, and who I have created, and formed and made for my glory. And a second pasuk is quoted, Ve'omer, in Shmot, as it is said in Shmot, Hashem yimloch leolam va'ed, God shall reign forever. Right? So this Mishnah is teaching us that basically everything that was created is for the kavod of Hashem. And I think that when we first read this, it's like Hashem is creating it like for Hashem's sake. But really I think it's for our sake that whatever is created, everything in the world can be used as a vehicle to serve Hashem, to thank Hashem, to bring holiness into this world, which I thought was a beautiful Mishnah to end on. And the end of the Mishnah, this is only the first half. Second half of the Mishnah, this is actually a very famous quote. Rabbi Hanania ben Akashia Omer, Rabbi Hanania, the son of Akashia, says, Ratza Hakadosh Baruch Hu lezakot et Yisrael. Hashem wanted to merit that, wanted the people of Israel to merit. If you've heard the expression, zechut, zechus, that Israel should merit. Lefichach hirba lehem Torah u'mitzvot. Therefore, He plentified to them Torah and mitzvot, as it says in Isaiah chapter 42. Hashem chafetz lema'an tzidko yagdil Torah v'yadir. Hashem was very delighted for His righteousness to make Torah great and powerful and glorious, is a good translation. So everything is created for Hashem's kavod, for us to use as Hashem's kavod, and Hashem wanted to give us all these Torahs, all these commandments, and all this learning, and all this wealth of knowledge and information, because Hashem chafetz leman tzidko yagdil Torah v'yadir, because Hashem delights in us making His Torah great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Good.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll be looking forward to 2.0.
Yeah, I mean, I am open to suggestions. I would definitely love to continue to learn. It's hard to dial in and focus in on what it should be. I'm very into text-based learning. I like to be on the page, the Gemara, the Mishnah. It could be Shulchan Aruch, Rambam. I mean, there's no shortage of.
What is Shulchan Aruch?
The Shulchan Aruch is the code of Jewish law.
Oh.
So basically, I would say it's like almost the next level down of sort of it's like what's the word I'm looking for? Like an index almost of all Jewish laws, almost in like, like notated form. And basically all the judgments that come from the Gemara and Mishnah
Or about
made it easy. So, let's say that the Gemara has 10,000 pages. Shulchan Aruch probably only has 6,000 pages. And then there's the Kitzer Shulchan Aruch. There's the shortened Shulchan Aruch that actually only has 2 volumes, and that's just like, it's the Cole's Notes of
Yes,
Shulchan Aruch. You can just like
I'll learn
look
it.
up the section and just get the answer.
So
Which
with
is
that, I will say thank you.
my
And
pleasure.
Chag Purim Sameach.
Chag Purim Sameach. Megillah reading Thursday night
All right. Thank you.
and Friday morning, of
Okay.
course. Don't forget your
Thank you.
costumes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Laila Tov, everyone.
Thanks, Adam. Certainly got a
Pleasure.
taste.
Good.
Thank you so
Very
much.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
ready for the rest.
Have a
Okay.
good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.